All right. Hi there, everybody. My name is Paula Fairbrother, and I am here with Kyle Harris, who just won an Emmy for our film, which is a documentary called I Stand the Guardians of the Water. And I just wanted to get together for Technique Tuesday to show you guys how you can be in a non-LA environment. Kyle's out in Oklahoma, and you can still create a village of people around you who will create great films. And if you are diligent and if you persevere and if you are willing to do the long marathon, you too may be able to make a Emmy award-winning film. So I met Kyle. I'm an executive producer on the movie, and all that meant on this one was Kyle was looking for funding to go up to Standing Rock during the protests in 2016 between the Guardians of the Water and the Dakota Access Pipeline people, which was that like June through December, Kyle, of 2016?
I was there in November, right before Thanksgiving.
So Kyle, tell us, give me a little bit of information. You grew up in Oklahoma, maybe. Tell us about where you grew up, when you started filming, what got you interested in being director-writer, basics. Give us the basic background of you.
I grew up in eastern Oklahoma. My grandpa, I spent a lot of summers with my grandpa, who was he worked at Judge Parker's courtroom in Fort Smith, Arkansas. And he would go and do tours and speak and stuff like that. And he was always just reading history books, and I was always around it. He had this house beside his house, like this log cabin. It was just, I would go in there during the summers when there wasn't anything to do, before computers and internet and cell phones. And so I would, sometimes during the hot summer days, you just find yourself wandering into this cabin just full of books, and you would just go through them all. And sometimes when you're a kid, you don't want to read a book, but then sometimes you relent and you finally sit down and you finally do, and you decide and you realize that there's so much, this wealth of like knowledge and stuff inside them. And so I guess at a young age, I was always around storytellers and just stories, books. I can remember reading like the Franklin W. Dixon Hardy Boys books as a kid, or the Louis L'Amour collection, and just always reading, but then always watching movies. Everybody watched Saturday morning cartoons, but I was that kid that didn't really do that too much. I did, but I sort of, for some reason, I just was drawn to more like mature content, like just like cinema stuff. And I just remember as a kid, like in the late 80s, watching Cool Hand Luke with my grandpa. And
it's a great voice, one of my favorites.
Yeah, I don't even know if I liked it at the moment, but when I sat down, I kind of got into it. And the more I got into this character, and you love this character, Lucas Jackson, and then all of a sudden he's shot and he's killed at the end, or spoiler alert. Maybe he's, it kind of leaves it up to your imagination a little bit, but he's shot in the throat, and you're just like, how could these guys do this to this person that you love?
Right.
And so I guess, like that sort of made me think a little bit about character, and that, it can be this sort of poem to the storytelling, that can be, or poetry to the storytelling, but it can be emotional and not always give you the, what you want. And that sort of made me think, and just affected me. And I think ever since then, that's sort of how I address story, and how I was affected as a kid watching those stories and like that, and those movies.
Yeah, I think the movie that we're talking about, which just won an Emmy, the Heartland Emmy, is called I Stand the Guardians of the Water. And it was filmed back in 2016. And the one thing that really impresses me with this movie is the poetry that you have in it. The beautiful shots, the long range. You've got lots of overshots with the, my brain.
Drones? With drone shots.
Thank you, drone shots. God, my brain left me for a second. So you have these gorgeous drone shots, and then you have some very intimate shots of a flower with a hand raised to the sky. Just some beautiful imagery, and with the music behind it, your love of poetry and storytelling is the one thing that drew me to your work, because you do have, I think, a fantastic way of just imagery. That's, I think, what's most impressed that I am with your work, is your eye for imagery and your ability to tell a story that's more poetic. It's not an in your
Sure.
face type of storytelling.
Right,
Um,
right.
how many movies did you make before I Stand?
I mean, I made several short films. I made one feature documentary that summer before, up in New York it was a Native American documentary as well. And then we had just finished post production. It was a long post production process. And then I was literally sitting in my office at the tribe, and this started happening at Standing Rock. And for like 2 or 3 weeks, I remember just watching it on social media sort of unfold, and
Yeah.
people were filming it with their cell phones, and I just had all these questions like, what's going on? And I think the media wasn't representing it correctly. And so I went to the tribe and just pitched them, hey, we just did this film. You've seen what I can do. Can we raise some money and go do this? And Delaware Nation, got behind it and helped out in a big way. And then we put out the Kickstarter campaign. I believe that's what it was back then.
Right.
And then producers and investors like yourself came on and helped us go make the film. Yeah.
And you jumped in the car with 2 other guys, right? That's how you went to make the film?
Pretty much.
Yeah, which is
we
pretty amazing, because so
before.
many and so many of the meetings that I have with the actors, it's they just feel like they have to have all these people behind them in order to do anything. And
Yeah.
I wanted to do this interview with you because you took 2 other guys. You had a cameraman and
Well, they were cameramen. I was a cameraman because that's what I went to film school for, was for
okay,
cinematography. So that goes back to the whole artsy camera stuff,
right,
the poetry. So being a camera guy first, that's sort of what I always go for, is like, what are we shooting and why? How does it relate to the story? What are the themes?
right,
Then I hired these other guys. I guess it kind of goes back to the origin a little bit. When I first came back to Oklahoma after film school, I didn't know anybody because I'm from Eastern Oklahoma, and I came back to Anadarko area, which is 3-4 hours away.
okay,
And when I was first starting, like getting into filmmaking, I was a cinematographer, and I couldn't get work in Oklahoma City because I felt like everybody had their clique, their little
yeah,
group, their teams. And so it was really hard for me to get in. So I knew I had to build my own team, and I was 31 years old. I'm 37 now. So I was 6 years ago. And so 7 years before this, I wasn't a filmmaker at all. And, 6 years later, here I am and repped in LA and all this. But I remember I went to OU Film School, and there was a guy there, he said, these are the guys that are about to graduate school. Look at their movies that they've been making for their projects, their class projects. And I found these guys, Austin and Colton, because they had done this black and white silent film that was kind of like harkens back to like the 1920s films, the black and white silent films. And
right,
everybody else was trying to make a horror film or something, just what we've seen 100 times before, but theirs was different. And
right.
so I just reached out to them. I was like, hey, you guys have this artsy eye. I think I do too. And start making movies together. And then, like I said, 6 years ago, we started making short films, and I had written a bunch of them, and they had too, and we just helped each other out. I was working as a casino manager at that time, so I had a little bit of money, and I basically invested all my money into myself, into the career that I wanted to pursue. And that's what it kind of takes. And then it just has this healthy obsession and just trying to find your next project and never letting this lull happen. I never had this downtime. I always just kept trying to stack projects and kept moving, keep the momentum up. But with
And
these,
where do you, because you're also writing too. You're the whole
yeah,
package, which I think is also really important to tell people, is don't just be an actor.
right,
Develop your skills in a bunch
yeah,
of different areas. And you don't necessarily have to go to school, but if you find your
no.
tribe where everybody's doing a little bit of something, it's a learning process. Was your first movie really, really great?
I think so. I
You
think it was
think
really,
so?
yeah, I
Awesome.
think it was a success for the Native American community. It
Yeah,
was a very poetic, just like Guardians of the Water,
yeah,
about a group of Native youth that went back to their ancestral homelands for the first time ever, and they got to spend 2 weeks there and get to relive sort of the traditions and culture that their people lived 200 years ago. And
yeah.
so we had to stay on location and shoot that, and follow
And
them
it was
around.
beautiful too, because I remember, I think I saw a clip of that, and that's what made me want to go ahead and support you for I Stand. But your
Yeah.
first shorts, were they, what I'm trying to ask is, were you fantastic out of the gate, or did you have a learning process as you went?
No, I was not good at first. My
But
first
that's
short
important for
film.
people to hear too, is that it takes time to learn the skills.
Yeah, yeah. It,
Yeah.
it takes, I did it in 6 years,
Yeah.
from when I first started. But I think I wrote, produced, and directed a dozen short films. Probably 5 or 6 short film documentaries, 2 feature docs. But then I'd written countless short films that we never even made, and then wrote 22 feature films. I'm not kidding when I say that.
That is
I'm
fantastic, Kyle. You're
writing 5 or 6 a year, and
wow.
just this year alone, I've probably written 3 already, and I've been busy trying to make a film and doing other projects. So um, I'm always thinking about the next thing. So like I said, I don't like to let time get in there and get, you know, for me personally, I like to keep the momentum high for myself.
So you're not waiting for somebody to come discover you, in other words.
That's never going to happen.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen. You got to create your own sort of future, your own, what you want for yourself. You have to go out and make it happen. And just like you were saying with actors, if you kind of have to be your own businessman, you have to be your own manager and seek out roles. And if you find a good writer that has interesting short films, produce the short film for yourself to star in.
Yeah.
That's what I did. I had to produce my own writing and then direct it. So, and then you start winning these awards. You put yourself out there, and then you start winning awards. And I got them all over here in my office. But and then you start to get validation for that work that you're doing, and then you just keep building that momentum up. And then,
Right.
yeah.
So tell me about heading out to iStand. You jump in a car, you head up there. You have backing from the Delaware Nation? Yes.
Yep.
And so did they help get you in contact with the people that you interviewed up there, or did you just arrive and say, who do I talk to? How did that process work?
Yeah, there were a couple people that knew people that were up there. But the tribal government didn't know their tribal government, so they didn't put me in, contact with them. I just sort of put it together within a couple of weeks, and we were gone. And then when we got there, we learned there was this sort of rude awakening that we did not know what was happening. When we first arrived there, after like a day on the road, the first day we were there, we have to go to the sort of end dock for reporters or media people,
Right.
and all these rules that you had to follow. And some of the rules were you couldn't record content in the camp, you couldn't record music, songs, dance, anything. You couldn't shoot in the camp. And so we just traveled for a day in a vehicle together, and we arrived here and realized, man, we can't even shoot a film. And
Yeah.
so how are we
Wow.
going to do this? And so then we were there for 8 days. One day was gone. And so we were like, okay, we're just gonna have to slowly sort of just jump into this in the deep end. And we started shooting B-roll footage the next day from afar, just using long lenses and sort of grabbing footage everywhere. And we were hiding behind vans. We were wherever, we were there to try to make a film. And then we would grab people for interviews, and they would say no. And it got a little scary, but I got lucky. We ventured outside of town after like the third day of shooting B-roll and following people around, and we went into town, like Sitting Bull College, like Fort Yates, I think that's where it was, and it was 20-30 miles away. And we went into town, and we went to the college and started talking to a librarian, and he was like, you know what, you can use this spare room. We'll put it, yeah, we'll put out, a call if anybody wants to come talk and share their experience. And so a lot of people showed up and did that. And then the gentleman, the Father Floberg, the one that the priest, we met him because we tried to go for lunch somewhere, and everything was closed. Like, it was just so packed you couldn't get it anywhere. There was like 3 restaurants in this little town, and all the protesters had come up, and it was just, you couldn't get in anywhere. But there was this church that was having Thanksgiving dinner, and it said open to the public.
Right.
And so I just on a whim, we just kind of went in there with Miss Jen Jewett, who was working at the college too. And we sat down, we were having lunch, and he just came over and started talking to us. We told him what we were doing there, and he said he'd be interested in talking to us. And that's
he
sort
did
of
a fantastic job. He was a great resource for you guys.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
did the police ever try and confiscate your equipment, or how did you get drone shots without getting in trouble? And you have some shots where you are in the camp, so how did that work?
Well,
Or you don't want to say?
They told us while we were there that the people shooting video weren't supposed to be doing that either.
Okay.
They can't track it all. There's just too
Right.
much, too many people hiding cell phones and recording stuff. You just can't keep track of it all. So we just took that approach, and we were just like, we're just going to film because this is something that needs to be told. And every meeting that we went to, I would keep hearing our stories not getting told, and I kept
Right.
myself, well, this is why you're not allowing it to be told. And so I just kept pushing, and yeah. So the drone footage we got from a guy, when we were there, we ran into this guy. We met him. We saw that he was working the drone and a lot of stuff, and basically I paid him out of the budget, let him know what we needed, and we went out and shot footage. And
Great.
so that kind of just fell under hiring another camera guy, and but we didn't know him before we got there, and so just when you're there and you're thinking like a producer, you're thinking like a filmmaker, you run into walls, and you're going to constantly run into walls. But when you get there, you start, instead of just giving up and be like, oh, we can't do this, it's like you have to keep pushing forward and find ways to get your film made and find your story, and that's just what I have that ability of. And I'm not afraid of rejection or people tell me no, sorry. I just keep pushing, keep going to find your story and find your film. That's what you have to
Right.
be.
Were you ever in fear for your safety when you were there? Because because of the beauty of your editing job, I couldn't tell which footage was your footage or which footage. I don't know if you took any news footage but there were some really close encounters that you have in there, especially the water cannons and stuff. I mean, it's just so depressing to watch it. Did you ever feel unsafe?
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple times. There was a group that was sort of hid out within the peaceful protesters. And I think they were there to sort of agitate. And they eventually got removed from the camp. I can't remember their names now, like what the group was called, but they weren't there as far as the peaceful protesting. And it was just kind of leading to some problems. And we kind of had a couple run-ins with those guys on location a couple times. They broke one of our tripods. They kicked it and broke it.
Wow.
I had my camera hanging from my neck on a strap, and they grabbed the camera and tried to pull it. And if I wouldn't have had the strap on, they might have broke it. But as far as the police, we never did. We never, we always shot from a distance, or when it was more of a peaceful protest part, we could get a little closer before things kind of got crazy.
Right.
We were there and did see some stuff, that was kind of wild, and but we never got personally hurt or anything like that. We weren't arrested or anything like that. We got close one time. We took off running down the road, literally running down the road from the cops.
Wow.
And and luckily got back to our vehicle. And the way that they had us sandwiched in, and at the other end there was other cops, and they were towing vehicles. And for whatever reason, they overlooked ours because ours had government plates.
Oh, interesting.
So we got lucky with that one.
Interesting. So obviously when you went up there, you didn't really know what your script was going to be or how so what is your process of, we're just going to start filming stuff, and then when you get back to home how did you figure out how to put the film together? Did you do it in small increments? Did you put a script together and then try and edit to the script? How did that work?
All right. Well, first of all, if you're a documentary filmmaker, always take your editors with you. That's number one lesson. Because if you don't have a script for a documentary and you're out there shooting tons of footage for a week or two, and then you come back home, you drop it in their lap, they're going to be like, what is this?
Yeah.
Now they have to sit there and literally watch 2 weeks worth of footage, and they have no idea where to start from, especially if there's no script, in which case there wasn't in our case. What I went up there with was a series of questions, like, what is going on here? How did this happen? Why are they doing, why are we peacefully protesting? Why is the Dakota Access Pipeline doing this? Are they on sacred land? It's just a series of questions. And then we just put those together. And then in post-production, we just went in and started answering them. Like, how did this all begin? So we started with the origin, way back, with the treaties in the 1800s. Right. And with the land. So that's the approach that we took. It's like, let's start from the beginning and then work our way up to now. And that's just, how we went. That's how we did it.
Yeah. You have a lot of inserts of photos, both historical and current photos, and then you also interviewed several people. Did you have to get permission to use any of those photos? Did you have to get signatures from people that they're not going to come and try and get money out of you later for the
Yep.
interview? How did that work?
Yeah, some of it was public domain, and then the rest of the stuff, if we borrowed pictures, then we had to contact the artist. The artist had to give us the okay. We had to credit them in the film. Any picture that we used that wasn't public domain, we had to credit the photographer or the site in which we got it and able to use it with. Same with music on the film too, and interviews. We had to do, contracts they have to sign and stuff like that to
Right. And
use
then
our license.
the scoring, who did the scoring for your piece?
Well, all my short films has been Corey Perschbacher, a good buddy of mine. But in this case, we needed some Native American music and just some more tonal type stuff.
Mhm.
And so what we did was there was this site called Pond 5, an art list, and you can go on there and you can license music. And so basically, I spent a couple of weeks just going through just endless files of music and just trying to find stuff that would match sort of the tone and vibe that I was kind of going for. Each song might even cost like up to $50 or $250, and then you buy that license and then you can put it in your film.
Excellent. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Hey, give me the name of that again because you broke up. What was the name of the site you went to?
Pond 5.
Pond 5. Okay, great
Yeah.
information for new
Yeah,
filmmakers.
Pond 5. And another one's called Art List. Art
Okay.
List. Yeah.
So how long did it, once you got home, how long was your post-production until you had your first, and interestingly enough, you've gone through a few renditions of the film. So the first edit, how long did it take you to complete that?
Probably no longer than 3 months, I wouldn't think. I mean, we came back around Thanksgiving, so I would imagine we had a cut in February or March.
Okay. And how many hours a day were you together working on it? Did your editors go off on your own? How did you guys divvy up the project?
Yeah, we lived about an hour apart. So when they first got back home with us, or back home, they started working on the edit, and they were the editors and the cameramen. But I feel like for me, like I'm the producer, I'm the camera and the director. I'm helping them with every other aspect. And I think when I got back, I was just sort of wore out. And so what I do is I just take 2 weeks off, and I let those guys just sort of do their thing for a few weeks and just sort of kind of put things together loosely, and then we kind of come in and start fine tuning.
Got it.
Also, like filmmaking for me is it's like an incredible high. You build you work so hard to get to that point, and then you're there, and then you work so hard, all this creative energy that there's blinders on to everything else around you, that when you're finally done and you're driving home, it sort of hits me. And I sort of, it's like this creative depression I have. And for like 2 weeks, it's just like the world doesn't make sense to me. Like I just wander around, look at trees, and
as an actor, it's definitely, if you do a show and you're geared, you do all the rehearsals for the show, and then you do, especially for theater, and then you do the show and you're concentrated with these people for so long, and it's your family and it's everything, and then the show's over and it's like, now what do I do?
Now what do I do in life?
Yeah, so you eat a lot of chocolate ice cream and watch TV. I don't know, but it is. There's a definite creative depression that comes when a project is finished.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you had some reiterations of the project. You brought on some new producers. Why and when and how and what for did you do that?
Well, I got repped in LA in 2018 for screenwriting. I went out on the town, sort of doing the water bottle tour for a few, every time I'd come out to LA, I'd go for a week and do 20 to 30 meetings. And then I met these producers, Marcus and Carrie Cox at Through Films, who are also producing Out of Exile.
Mm-hmm.
They jumped on board my script called Bloodroot that sort of went around town. Made good friends with them, and they started watching my short films, and they watched the documentary. And I guess this would have been, it's been a while now, over a year ago. And so we started talking about it, and they're like, this is really good. What did you try to do with this? And they're like, well, 2017, 2018, it played at some local festivals, and then I just sort of went on to other projects, and they're like, well, this thing's got, it's good. You can do something with this. And I thought, well, okay, what would you like to do? And then we got busy on Out of Exile. We started putting that together, and then this year the coronavirus thing hit, and they rewatched it, and they contacted me, and they're like, okay, let's do a re-edit to make it more timely. So we cut out the ending and redid the ending to the edit, and basically kind of gave it a little revamp, bring it up to more of a relevant time, and so their thought was, you know what, we're going to submit this to an Emmy because we think it has, you know, it's timely, and the protests had started happening, and so they sent it out, and yeah, I mean, I never thought personally we'd win. I'm just one of those guys that never believes that he deserves the win anyways. I just feel like, you know, there's always better films, and so I just, you know, they would remind me like, hey, you know, the Emmys is this weekend. I was like, you know, that's cool.
Whatever. Yeah.
I'm working on this other script, but I love them to death, and then we won, and so yeah, you know, it's been a big thing. So now what they're trying to do is take it out to some buyers, or trying to find a bigger audience for it versus just being on YouTube or on Vimeo.
Yeah, well, hopefully Netflix or Amazon will pick it up, and it'll get some more traction, which is fantastic. I mean, it's just fantastic. Going out to LA. Now, this is important because tons of actors on the TMFA group, the Talent Managers for Actors group, that I'm doing this interview for, a lot of them are not in LA. And I want to make it a point that you don't have to, you can come out to LA and you can do what you did, and that is shop yourself around, but still grow within your own community and create your own creative tribe within your own community before making the move, right? But when you came out here, how did you set up meetings? Did you send scripts out first ahead of time? How did you decide who you wanted to meet with? What was your process for getting out and eventually getting, you're with CAA now, correct?
No, I'm with Mosaic.
Mosaic, okay. So how did that come about?
Well, like you said, you first get your team, you know, people that you can sort of rely on, that sort of understand what kind of films you like, and you need to understand your own voice. You know, I feel like, and sometimes people want to make a horror film, then they're going to make a comedy, and then they're going to do an action film, and it's like, that's fine, but it's like there needs to be like a through line, I feel like, that connects your stories together, and so there's a voice there, so they recognize the filmmaker, the storyteller. So you build your team, you make short films, and if you're a writer like me, I was always writing feature films between. And then I started sending them out to people about 3 years ago. I sent to a couple script consultants, and I never really wanted to do it. I never submitted to big festivals, you know, for screenplays. But I sent it to the script consultant, and he came back and he was just like, man, your stuff's good. It's better than the script I'm working on right now with Mel Gibson attached. And I thought to myself, like, okay, that's really cool. He's like, let me show this to a couple people. So I was like, sure. And the next thing I know, there's this emails to start coming in, producers in LA. And one of the producers, who's, you know, basically responsible for me getting out there and getting repped, Craig Perry, who's the producers on the Final Destination movies and the American Pie movies. Somehow I got to him. He read Bloodroot, and next thing I know, he sent it out to all these management companies, and now they're calling me on the phone. And so I had all these meetings with these management companies. And then I picked one, and I signed with Mosaic. And then basically they were like, well, what else do you have? You know, they loved that script, and they're like, well, what else you got? So I sent them my stuff, and the next thing I know, they're sending it out all over town, like blasting it out. Like they basically, introduced you to the town, a new writer to the town. And then they set up meetings with people that they think would match your voice, like the style of writing that you do.
Right.
And so that's what I would do. I'd come out and I'd stay for a week and just do like 5 meetings a day. And a couple of months later, I'd come out and do it again. And, you know, I've just been doing that ever since. And you just meet, you know, not every producer you meet, you're going to like vibe with. Some of them are a lot bigger in scale. I've met with Bruckheimer. I've met with Bad Robot, Universal, Paramount. I mean, you meet with all these big companies, and you're excited that something's going to happen with it. But I feel like just the big companies work with the big writers, the ones that are proven. So you have to sort of prove yourself in LA, just like you did when you start in Oklahoma or wherever you're at. You have to prove yourself and show them that you're this voice that deserves to be heard. And I started building my team in LA, and Marcus and Carrie at Through Films, and David Pribble and Craig Perry and so many others. And then I started making the films for, cheap, making these low budget independent films like Out of Exile. And so that's where I'm at now. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And are you frequently, when you write something, do you try and tie yourself also as the director, or do you just sell your written work and let it go and take the cash and run?
Yeah, that's a great question. On Bloodroot, I wanted to direct it. We were going to do it for like $2 million. And then in LA, since I was a newbie out there, for 2 years, we tried to get it made with, name actors, big name actors. And they weren't grabbing onto it. Their agents, I feel like, try to protect them from first time directors, and which is fine. And so I knew that I needed to scale back and start, way lower. Start at $250,000, and then do a 500,000, then do $1 million, then 2 million. So it's, start small, finish big kind of thing. Yeah.
And are you learning this from the guidance through the producers that you're working with, or was this your own thought of, let me just scale back and move forward?
That was my thought. Just because I saw what the time was there, trying to make a $2 million movie as a first time director, it took 2 years.
Yeah.
And in that 2 years, we went through a dozen actors. And when you submit to an actor, we want to wait till we get a no or a pass or something. Sometimes it would take a month for each one. And so you just lose that time. And during that time, I would just kind of get frustrated because I like to keep the momentum up here,
Right.
And so I just keep writing new stuff. I wasn't just going to rely on that one script to save me, and just kept doing things. And I would keep submitting to my reps, and they'd keep sending things out. And then Out of Exile, I wrote that script, and then just decided, I'm going to do this, back in Oklahoma with the crew that I know, and hire some outside people, like SAG actors from LA and New York, and we just went out and started raising money. And it's literally just like you think it is. You got to knock on people's door, ask them for money. I think there's this thought in people's heads that producers are going to get the money somehow. If you get a good enough producer, or if you get a big enough actor, you're going to be okay. And that's not true either. Money is, you have to go out and find it. And it's, you have to sometimes talk to 100, 200 people, just on $250,000 budget. And so, I feel like that's the thing where filmmakers, they have that ambition, but they might give up, is that after they reach out to 10 or 20 people and they say no, or they can, or whatever, whatever that might be, they just say, okay, I guess my film's not getting made. Well, where I'm the exact opposite, that kind of just gets me fired up. And I'm just like, okay, well, I'm just going to knock on every door I can until we start piecing this thing together. And then you literally you find things everywhere, and it's just interesting how it's just sort of panned out. And it's a really interesting process. And I can honestly say producing is not my favorite part, but I've learned a lot from it, as a filmmaker.
So how do you keep yourself going amidst all the rejection? Because we sat down at a table together in Oklahoma soon after I Stand was done. And we were talking about how to move it forward and get it seen, and how to get it in festivals. And where $50 for a festival entry was like, oh crap, man, we got to come up with another $50. How do you keep yourself going when you're like, crap, man, I'm just tired of hitting my head against the door, banging on doors? What do you use to inspire yourself to keep moving forward? Or do you just think it's an innate thing in you, and you just won't give up no matter what?
Yeah, that's what it is. It's just built into me somewhere. I know, and I trust my instinct enough to know that if I'm given that ability to shine, I'm going to do my best. I'm not going to, forget the language, half-ass it.
Yeah.
Or, I think that if you feel like as a filmmaker that you might not do the best job, you'll stop. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You'll give up. But like me, there's something, like you said, innate in me that I just know that my stories, have a message, and there's a poetry to it. And so I just feel compelled. There's nothing else that I can do. There's no other opportunity for me. This is the only job. And that's the way I think you have to be.
No plan B.
there's no plan B. No way. This is filmmaking. This is fun. I was like,
And,
plus, like we were talking about earlier, I'm 37. You know, I didn't start filmmaking until I was 31. I had a chance to go to college. I had a chance to go to the military. I got a chance to live my life and make mistakes, and just I've always been observant, and just I've always been a listener. My parents were teachers. I've always read books. I've always loved movies, and so all these things just sort of combined. I think my stepdad, who raised me, was a football coach, so there's this level of competitiveness inside of me,
yeah,
not give up.
yeah.
Just all those things combined, you know, and I just feel like I get it, and I don't want to just go do something else.
Where are you pulling all your inspiration from for your projects?
I don't know.
Is
Just
is it a well, like with I Stand, you were seeing
yeah.
things on TV and you were like, what's really going on? So that was your spark there. But like your current film that you're going into production when?
October 1,
October 1. So, and the name of that film is
Out of Exile. Just
Exile. Okay.
yeah, Out of
So,
Exile.
and then you're filming that in Oklahoma, correct? In
Yeah.
Oklahoma. All right. So, what was your inspiration for that one?
Oh,
How long ago did you write it? Maybe is this a recent write, or is this something you had in
yeah.
your files?
Yeah, I wrote a draft of the Jim Thorpe biopic last fall for Angelina Jolie in Pictureworks Entertainment, and got to spend a week up in the Northeast with the producers and Martin Sensmeyer's playing Jim Thorpe. And I remember driving in the vehicle with him one day, and I was just thinking about this idea, and I remember just kind of pitching it to some people while I was there. So I'm always just thinking about ideas, and I came back home, and I started watching movies like The Town, Ben Affleck's The Town, Heat with De Niro, heist films. I started watching these heist films, and I'm not kidding when I say this. I'm not. When I say I watched The Town, I watched it 100 times.
Wow.
It just was on every day. I would just put it on again, and I think every time I do a project, I have to sort of get into that world, and I have to see every detail. I have to read the scripts and watch every movie I can on it, and I sort of just stay in this tonal world. And then I sat down, I started writing the script, did 2 drafts before I sent it out, and then within the second draft after I sent it out, a producer started coming back like, "Hey, this is good. Let's do it for $5 million." And I said, "Nope," because I know what that means. That means 5 years.
Yeah.
So I said, 250 grand, we're going to go do this, my way. And a very ambitious film on 250 grand, but I've got a great cast, a great crew now.
Yeah.
We got, it's just going out there and putting poetry in front of the lens.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Adam take the lead. And
oh yeah.
Yeah, it's really fun. I mean, I found the Actor Factor community, I don't know, in like 2010 maybe. So that's when I started meeting Lori Cummings, who's another executive producer on I Stand, and Sydney Flack, who's also on I Stand. So that little group is what introduced me to you. But those people, it's been so fun to watch this little tribe of filmmakers in Oklahoma, and now everybody's starting to do some really great stuff, and it's so inspiring to see you guys, because Adam's won an Emmy also, correct?
Yeah, he's won 2.
Production group. He's won two Emmys. Yeah.
2
So it's super awesome to see you guys just excelling and exceeding. Now, how come you haven't decided to move out to LA?
I almost did twice. Just because I think when I first got repped, I had a house, and I had a couple of dogs, and I had an acre yard, and my house payment was like $1,100. But when I would go out to LA, I'd stay with a buddy who lived in this little bitty flat, and he was paying like $2,500.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, I have a 2,500 square foot house with an acre yard for $1,100.
Yeah.
I thought, that's just insane. I don't know how I'm gonna downgrade into this little bitty space.
Right.
And so that kind of, I was reluctant for that reason. And then I downgraded from that, though. I moved into an apartment, and then I just kept saying to myself, I was going to come out there when something sort of took hold, and it was Now things are really taking hold, but I got this film that's going to shoot first. So probably maybe next year, if coronavirus and all that stuff we can figure out what that's going to
Yeah,
happen with that. But yeah, next year, because I'm getting offers now.
that's
Matter of fact,
awesome.
I've got, for Amazon to write on Amazon in a writer's room. But everything's done through Zoom now. So it's just, you can work anywhere.
Exactly. Yeah, and you guys are filming right now in Oklahoma, but here in LA, unless it's a non-union, there's really just not a lot going on at the moment. And I don't know when. They keep saying it's going to open up, but it seems to just keep getting pushed.
Yeah.
So we'll see when that happens. Is there
Yeah.
anything else that you want to give to anybody that's looking to make a film? That's an independent filmmaker, that's an actor, that, what advice can you give people to just keep moving forward, and the marathon that you have to be on to do it?
Yeah, you definitely have to have the marathon mentality. Don't try to speed to the finish line, because you're not gonna get there, first of all. And if you did, you're just gonna be wore out and burn out fast. I would say figure out the stories you want to tell. As an actor, as a writer, as a filmmaker, figure that out first, and then just be authentic to yourself. I think that's a big issue. So I feel like if you're a writer and if you're authentic to yourself, there's something that you have inside you that no other writer can take away from you. That's as a filmmaker, that's as an actor, it, better than anybody else does. For instance, and I hate to get into this, but I came from my family growing up, there was several divorces. So the product of divorce, love my parents to death, but lots of divorces in my family. And so, I felt like as a kid that this idea of failed parenthood, or that thematic idea of failed parenthood, and then as I got older, I had my daughter, and then me and my daughter's mother split, and then so now she's always just coming in and out of my life too, as my daughter, and that's hard. That's something that I've lived and I know personally. So everything that I write, even out of exile. So this is outside of the documentaries. Every film I've written, all 22 of them, at the center core of the story, I'm authentic to myself, and I tell a story about failed parenthood. So because that's how I know, that's that story I know, and I just try to find different ways to be, I guess, metaphorical with that. So even like with Out of Exile, it's a cops and robbers film, masked around this failed parenthood story. The character of Gabe, he just gets out of prison and he's going back to work for his old crime boss, robbing banks and armored cars again. So his want is to get all this money and then get out of town. But what he really needs to do is, when he reconnects with his estranged daughter, he finds out that he needs to, help her and get her out of town and not himself, and so there's how I blend that in there. So I think if you're a storyteller, you're a filmmaker or an actor, there's like certain things that you have that you can pull on, right? And I think if you can find a way to use that in everything you work on, it'll make your stuff stand out more, and it'll make you drawn to it more. So it means something more to you. So I think, because I've done some acting in some short films too. I wasn't any good at it. I'm too short. My hair is too long. I got too many tattoos. But you find that thing in you that only you know how to pull from. And I feel like sometimes I think people think I can just walk into a room and pretend. It's like, just try to be very authentic to yourself and transparent with how you come across with people. And when it comes to acting, even or producing or writing or directing, that's what I say. That's my best advice. Once I found that, because I wrote probably 5 or 6 screenplays that are just a mess that I'll never show anybody. They're collecting dust on a hard drive somewhere. Yeah. But once I figured out my voice, that's what it's saying about your voice. Or once you figure that out, ride that wave and don't get off of it, because that's what is going to keep you coming back. And it doesn't matter if I write a dinosaur movie or a movie, some futuristic sci-fi film where they're taking brains out of people's ears, it will come back at some point in the story at its central core will be about parenthood, and that's the way it is. Yeah.
Interesting. No, that's great advice to remain true to yourself. And
Yep.
as an acting coach, I say that to people all the time. You got to you don't overact it. Just be you.
Yeah.
You're enough.
Yeah.
Who you are is enough, and just be that, and people will either appreciate that or it won't fit your role. But that's okay. Just be you. Otherwise, you're just pretending.
Yeah, you don't want to pretend, because they'll be able to smell you out in the room if you're trying to pretend to be something else.
Last fun thing, name some of your favorite films and why.
Okay, Cool Hand Luke, obviously.
Yeah.
No Country for Old Men. There Will Be Blood. The Thin Red Line. Last of the Mohicans. Heat. I think The Shawshank Redemption.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. Road to Perdition with Tom Hanks. I love that movie. There's so many.
Kyle, I think you're going to be an Oscar winner sooner than later. I so respect your work and your talent, and your work ethic, and the way you tell a story just is fresh and unique and important. I mean, it's just, you've got a great grasp of storytelling, and it's so fun to watch your work. And I'm so excited what's ahead for you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Awesome. I wish you all the best, Kyle, and look for seeing you on the red carpet again, and maybe we'll work again together in the future.
Absolutely.
All right.
Always. Thanks, guys. Thanks. See ya.